following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
This is Talkin Cowboys. Streaming live from the Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star in Frisco.
Handoff, Elliott plowing to the goal line. Barry, sacked by Lord. Prescott keeps it, and he bangs it in for the touchdown.
And now your hosts, Isaiah Stanback, Heckma Harrison, Rob Phillips, and Kyle Yeomans.
It's an off-season edition of Talkin Cowboys presented by Geico from the SWBC Mortgage Studios, virtually as always, or at least what it's been like for the past 10 months. But we're continuing to break down this Dallas Cowboys team, and a lot of breaking news that hit the fans since, I guess Friday. But we are technically the first show that gets to talk about it. But we're going to break down an entire coaching search, a coach firing, and really an overhaul in the span of an hour. So buckle up, ladies and gentlemen, and come along for the ride. We're excited to bring you along with us. Kyle Yeomans alongside Heckma Harrison, Rob Phillips, and Isaiah Stanback. And gentlemen, let's jump right into this. Mike Nolan, as of Friday afternoon, it was officially reported and released that he was let go of his duties as defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. Jim Tomsula was also on that list. And really, 12 months almost to the day that we were hiring Mike McCarthy last year, you turn around and you fire a defensive coordinator initially. Mike Nolan wasn't in Dallas long enough to the fact that if you go and you Google Cowboys defensive coordinator, the first pictures that pop up are Rod Marinelli and Chris Richard. So those are the first pictures that pop up on Google if you go and Google Cowboys defensive coordinator. But Rob, kind of tell us how this went down and what your thoughts of the move are for Cowboys Nation. It was a move that wasn't necessarily surprising.
No, it wasn't, Kyle. And I know we've had our discussion on the show the last couple weeks. Like, what were the chances that he could be back if they continued on an upward trend defensively? And obviously the takeaways went up the last 4 games of the season. I believe they had 12 takeaways, which more than double what they had or close to it early in the season. But they just didn't see enough improvement overall. And, I kind of got the sense that by mid-December, after that Ravens game, I think it was pretty clear that they were at least looking hard at making a change. And while there was improvement down the stretch, the Giants game in the finale last week really was kind of another step backward in terms of yards given up, points given up, big plays given up. And I just quickly looked at the stats during that 4-game stretch, guys, where we talked about where they made some progress. They felt like they were more comfortable in the scheme, all of that. They still gave up an average of 395 yards in those 4 games. They won 3 out of 4. And that's actually more. That's actually more per game than they'd average for the season. That was 386. Now the run defense, which is one of the biggest reasons why they made the change, and obviously Jim Tomsula, D-line coach, not back either. They gave up 131 rushing yards in those last 4 games, 158 average for the season. So I don't think they saw enough improvement down the stretch, guys, to really make a difference.
Heckma?
Rob, you're so nice, man. I tell you, man, the way that you word it and you put it out. I love that. But if all of those things, and you talk about the Ravens game actually being the indictment on him as a coach, and this whole defense from just start to finish. You look at if you're going to take the last 4 games, okay, that's just a sample size. But you go back to games like the Cleveland Browns game where we were just not able to stop anybody. And I think this defense and whatever scheme they were playing, 2-gap read for the D linemen, the secondary, no one understood this defense at all. And that's where you had those anonymous sources that leaked reports to James Slater saying that this defensive coordinator staff, the staff didn't know what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And it just started early. And and for guys like Jalen Smith, who I could say this is probably one of his worst years as far as, statistics say that obviously he made a lot of tackles, but just the eyeball test was saying that, man, 54 did not know where he was. And you saw a lot of that from guys just trying to freestyle, just do it their own way because they were lost the whole season. And look, if you tried, those turnovers may have been where people started to talk about, okay, is there a chance that he's saving his job? But nah, it just wasn't enough. We couldn't protect the boundary, and we darn sure couldn't stop the run.
You guys hit it out the park. I mean, pretty much when it comes down to it, it comes down to not allowing teams to score and not giving up yardage. If you give up yardage, you allow teams to be in position to score. So obviously we didn't do a good job of any of that this year, and obviously the scheme was not getting across as well. Or you saw early on, we brought guys in to the organization that we thought were going to be huge attributes in terms of veterans, and they weren't. Were they not because they weren't good players, or were they not because they didn't fit in his scheme? And that's a question that's going to be asked now, right? Maybe those guys weren't good enough players, but maybe just his scheme didn't allow for them to be great. So now that's a question that gets raised. And then you start looking at the fact that they now have released the defensive line coach. Well, typically, defensive coordinators, yes. Offensive coordinators, yes. They have to take the fall. However, as soon as you start releasing position coaches, now there's a communication issue. Now there's a connectivity issue. Now there's guys that apparently don't like that particular individual and obviously have an issue with the system. So there's a whole lot of things, obviously, that might be underlying factors as to why these decisions got made. Rob, you already hit on it. The fact that turnovers helped you in terms of potentially helping you save your job. But at the end of the day, the yardage was what killed you. That's what was consistent. That's what never went down.
And I think that's what was frustrating about this defense ultimately was you need turnovers to make it go round. You need turnovers to make it work. And through the first 12 weeks of the season, that didn't happen. You didn't have turnovers, except for maybe week 8 against Philadelphia. There was not a single moment in that season where you felt like, hey, this is a momentum-building type of game for this defense. Well, you finally got that down the stretch. But once again, who was it against? It was against Cincinnati, San Francisco, and Philadelphia again. I mean, those are the teams that you force turnovers against. So whenever it comes to the body of work, ultimately it wasn't enough to keep Mike Nolan around. But Hetma, you alluded to the system and how just complex it was and how different it was. Last year in the offseason, we were excited for change because we were coming off of the Marinelli days and coming off of let's get scheme players, not the best players type of mentality. And the change happened. We got better players, at least we thought so. And we put them into a scheme, but the scheme ultimately didn't work. So where do you sit on the fence, or where do all three of you guys sit on the fence whenever it comes to scheme versus talent on this Cowboys defense? Because ultimately neither one of them worked.
Well, I mean, I think that the coaches, when they put a game plan together and they have a base that they like to play, they want certain types of guys, whether it be body style or what have you in previous defenses that they've played in. It just seemed like from the beginning that this defense didn't sink in. And I don't know if it would have, if these guys had an OTA or preseason, if any of it would have stuck because of how bad they were. Not only bad in the turnover differential, but on third downs. They could not get off the field. And there were games out there, the Seattle games, the Brown games, I keep going back to the Arizona game, where, true, you're not getting turnovers. You're not even presenting that pressure where you can get those scoop and score, sack, strip, fumbles, but you're not able to get off the field. And just all of those things were just indicators of that this defense was not going to have any success. Whether, look, that's why I think it's very important that we go ahead and get a hire on our defensive coordinator ASAP, because what scheme is that guy going to be looking for? What is he going to want to play? Is it going to be a one-gap read, two-gap system? What is that going to be? And so whatever the Cowboys do going forward, they're going to have to get the personnel together to be able to have any success, because if you look at 2020, man, it just wasn't it.
Yeah, I think it's a great combination of that, Heck, and I kind of want to pose a question. Just imagine if we had our little number 2 lapices, right? Our little number 2 pencils that they give you, right? No eraser on it, just to cut off little short ones, right? And they gave you a piece of paper and it had 2 circles and it said, do defensive coordinators create turnovers or do personnel create turnovers, right? And I think that's a question that you have to ask yourself, right? So when we start talking about, were those turnovers going to save his job potentially? And I think as a general manager, as an owner of an organization, I think you have to look at that and say, I think those are our players that were forcing those turnovers and not so much the scheme. So why should those turnovers save his job?
That's a good one.
Yeah, and the other factor there is your offense played better down the stretch too. You finally got your offense kind of rolling a little bit with a patchwork offensive line and Andy Dalton with some time at quarterback. And when you put up some points, now now your defense can pin their ears back a little bit. And it does go back to what Kyle said about the competition. The final 4 games of the season, competition was not nearly as good as some of the teams they played earlier in the season. But it is a complex discussion because, you can certainly question the Mike Nolan hire from the beginning and say, well, based on his track record, defenses that he coordinated in the past did not have a lot of success. But I do think this was, in large scope, a mistake by the organization in terms of Jerry has spoken of this, trying to implement too much change in a crazy offseason with no in-person offseason program. Jerry said, look, the other day on the Fan, that's on me. He signed off on that. And they were, I think, so excited about trying to shift away from those Marinelli years and trying to be a little bit more multiple, a little more different pre-snap, that they crammed it all in. It didn't work. And one thing Mike McCarthy spoke to on the Fan last week was part of these exit interviews, he's getting a lot of feedback on we need to do a better job of our virtual communication. The install was virtual in the spring and summer, and then they had 3 weeks to get on the field and try to put it on the field. So it's a complex discussion beyond Mike Nolan didn't do a good job. I think there was a lot of reasons why it didn't work, but ultimately he's the defensive coordinator, and the final stats are, I'm not going to be too nice here, Heckma. I mean, the most points allowed in franchise history, the second worst run defense in the league, and just a gaggle of big plays allowed. Something had to change.
Hey, Rob, can we go back and look at whatever Cleveland did for their install this past week? Can we go back and just copy that?
Yeah, right? And you know what? I was going to hit on that. That's a great point. Did you guys see Baker Mayfield's post-game interview last night? Where he talked about patchwork offensive line, and he said, this guy stepped up, and there's a guy named Zach or somebody that I introduced myself to in the locker room pregame, and he stepped in, did a great job at left guard. That. Now that is the definition of adversity, and that's why you hear it from Team Brass. You cannot, stick those COVID excuses for too long because other teams have made it work.
Well.
That was another team with a first-year head coach as well, and a whole entirely different coaching staff or new coaching staff, and quite possibly Kevin Stefanski is going to win Coach of the Year. I mean, at least if he doesn't, he should be in that conversation. I think he does end up winning Coach of the Year, but that's a great point, Rob, because you can make all of these excuses. Excuses are easy. It's always been that way. That's the cheap man's way out whenever it comes to mistakes. And I don't think Jerry made excuses on 105.3 The Fan this past week whenever they were talking about kind of the coaching hire and kind of the season that went along. I don't believe he was necessarily making excuses because there were challenges along the way. But Isaiah, do you really look at this as maybe the biggest regret that maybe the front office had this past year was hiring a guy like Mike Nolan and trying to switch things up as emphatically as they did going into a year like this?
I say no. I think it's just another guy that they just swung and missed on. Unfortunately, and unfortunately that one guy controls everybody else. They swung and miss on the safety, obviously, right? They swung and miss on freaking Poe,
still can't
right?
believe that. Yep. I still can't believe the
right? So you swung and miss, and Poe swung and miss, and that's strike 2. Strike 3, doggone, the defensive coordinator, right? But unfortunately, the defensive coordinator has a greater effect over the result of your defense. So they just swung and missed this offseason, and they have to go back and they have to reevaluate, see, hey, what is it that we use as analytics as reasons to select somebody, and how can we differ that going forward? Because obviously what we did this year did not work for us.
You guys have heard the saying, hindsight is 20/20. And so you can look back at it. It's the Lord's own. It doesn't look so good right now. But coming in, Mike Nolan, the hire, we were talking about his dad and the lineage of coaching and all of that, man. So, it was just a failed attempt at bringing a guy in that did not have a grasp on the personnel that he had to try and play this over-the-top defense that he was, trying to implement. Look, the Cowboys right now are in a situation where they have got to figure this out up front to get the personnel that they need to play the style that they want. What is that, right? Are we going to stay in 3-4? Are we going to go to a 4-3? Because if you look around the NFL, if you look at a team like New England, Belichick will play whatever defense he needs to beat you. If you got a problem with the 4-3, We playing 4-3 this week. But you have to have players versatile enough and smart enough to be able to play that. Now, I'm not saying that our players were not smart.
And willing.
Look, I'm just saying we didn't have the guys to play it. So let's not try and make something out of these guys that they aren't. Let's get the guys in here that we need that can we can change these schemes and use words like hybrid as it relates to players in the positions that they play.
You guys nailed it.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Isaiah.
No, I was just going to throw the one point in there. The one thing I would add to that, Heck, is the guys have to be willing. All those things you said were absolutely correct, but you have to have the right personnel, the right type of personalities on there, and right character that say, hey, I don't care what I normally would do. I don't care what type of scheme I would flourish in best. I'm doing this for the greater good of the team. And I don't know if we have all those guys on this team.
Yeah, I mean, based on those the unnamed sources early in the season, it sounded like there was some pushback, at least somewhere. And then 3 veterans they parted ways with mid-season. Worley, Poe, and Everson Griffin. But you guys nailed it. Like that's another part of this discussion that makes it kind of complex is the personnel part of it. They did, Isaiah, they swung and missed on some free agents. And they didn't
multiple guys.
Yeah. And I think, I disagree with people that say, well, this is the same defense that was middle of the pack last year or the year before with Rod Marinelli in charge. I disagree with that because I don't think I think they missed Byron Jones. I think they missed Malik Collins in the middle of the defensive line, especially, and you have to factor injuries. You lose Tristan Hill, you lose Gerald McCoy in camp. Yep. They could have used Jeff Heath at safety. They definitely could have used Jeff Heath at safety this year. Those positions were not filled adequately, and you had some injuries on top of it, and then you had confusion, disconnect with the scheme itself. It was just kind of like a perfect storm of the result is one of the worst defenses the Cowboys have ever had statistically.
When you talk about the guys, not having the right guys, I think that's a great point because I think one of those right guys was Byron Jones. And I think that's the biggest loss from last year to 2020 was not having Byron Jones because even though he didn't have the interceptions, everyone's going to look at the interceptions and say he didn't have the picks. I don't want to hear that because he locked down 33% of your field so that way 10 other guys had to fill the rest of the 67% of the rest of the field. 2/3 of the field were where 10 guys were, and then one took care of 1/3 of the field. And that's exactly what Byron Jones did, and you didn't have that out there this year. But outside of the personnel, Rob, do you feel like Mike Nolan got a fair shot from his first year and his only year in Dallas? Because, like you said, you could have questioned the hiring from the beginning. So he got a shot, but was it a fair one?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. You had a full season to try to put it together. I think, as we mentioned earlier, the COVID excuse lasts for a certain amount of time, but when you see other teams having success, and I think the Cowboys officials have said this, at a certain point you can't use it as an excuse. And I don't say it's an unfair shot. I do say there are other reasons besides Mike Nolan for why this didn't work. And look, it's a really good front office that does a great job of evaluating talent. But there's some moves they made that didn't work out that didn't help matters. Now, would Mike Nolan have had more success with a full offseason to implement his program? I have no doubt about that. But this is the way the world is right now, and something had to change. And the other part of it, too, is we're going to find out what the salary cap is. Odds are they're not going to have a lot of room to make a bunch of big changes to upgrade personnel. So what do you need to do? Then you probably need to get a new voice. If you're going to change something, get a new voice, new scheme, whatever you need to do to try to make the players that you do have better.
Isaiah?
I'm still laughing at Rob wanting to say something nice. Rob was like, yeah, no.
Never mind.
I always try, but you can't.
Kyle, repeat the question for me, man. Rob threw me off.
So, yeah, that's funny. Did Mike Nolan get a fair shot in his 1 year in Dallas?
Fair is such a subjective term. So yes, fair. Yes, absolutely. He had all the resources. He had all the opportunity, all the support, and he had talent to work with initially. Boom, a fair shot. Get in there. You try to get your system in. Everybody had the same opportunity to try to teach their system via virtual this year. And then guess what? Guys that he brought in, along with Will McClay and everybody else, guess what? They didn't work out. They didn't work out. Your guys that you had your mark on did not work. As a defensive coordinator, you have say in the type of players that you want. And you can best believe that he went up to Will McClay, went to Mr. Jones and said, hey, I want Griffin. I want Poe. I like Worley. And these guys work for what I'm going to try to do. They definitely talked to him about that. So you can best believe that he had a part in that. So guess what? He swung and missed on those personnel. Then he had injuries. Crap. Guess what? Injuries suck. They suck, right? They suck for the players. They suck for the defensive coordinators that are out there trying to figure things out. So, but as a defensive coordinator, guess what? You have to adapt. You have to adapt. You just talked about Coach Belichick, king of adaptation, right? He just figures it out. He doesn't care. Whatever personnel he has, he got his butt kicked this year. But dude, guess what? He had 10 or 11 starters that decided to sit out this year. Yeah. Right? But guess what? You still play competitive ball. You still figure out a way to go out there and try to put your best foot forward. And the other note is Coach Nolan was unable to convince his guys to play for him.
Yeah.
And that's just a respect factor. Guys play for people that they respect. Were we in the locker room? Not at all. Were we at practice this year? Not at all. Right? But for whatever reason, there was a disconnect there, and at no point did it seem like these guys were playing for their coach. And you could take that same correlation and look at other teams, and it appears at certain times, most times, they are playing for their coaches. Last night was a perfect example for Cleveland. Cleveland come out and busted Pittsburgh in the mouth. Their coach wasn't even there. You could best believe they were playing for their coach. You could see the difference.
Heckma?
Like 60 years of Cowboy football, and Mike Nolan's defense gave up the most points and second most yards. Heads were going to roll. You knew it. Yeah. I mean, and I don't mean to say that. I mean, because coaches have families, and this, I know all too well that you don't want to see guys have to uproot their whole families and things in this situation, yeah. But something had to give. And for the historic numbers that this defense put up, there was no way they were going to bring him back. And it didn't matter, aside from making a playoff run. And they had to make a significant playoff run for him to keep his job. But yeah, the numbers and the writing was on the wall, especially like you said, Rob, after the Ravens game.
And the other part of it too is looking forward. We talk about the challenges of a virtual offseason. It quite possibly could be the same situation by the time we get to April. We'll see. I mean,
God, no.
Referenced that. No. Well, I hate to break bad news.
True.
He referenced that last week that it's we've got to improve that part of our offseason training in the event that we have to keep doing that. So they did not do well with that last year, and so that's going to be a challenge for the next defensive coordinator, whoever that is, and we'll get into that soon, Kyle.
Yeah, and I feel like we all learned a lesson in the point of let's not throw a party until we know a free agent's going to work out. Because Everson Griffin, like we said, and HaHa Clinton Dix, and Dontari Poe, and Brandon Carr. I mean, there were so many different signings that we were like, yeah, this is going to be great. We're going to go win a Super Bowl because we finally have a defense. No, didn't work out because, hey, everything is great until you put it on the field, and then you got to actually play the game, and that's why they do end up playing the games. Now, I want to take a moment here before our first break to give a special shout-out to one of our favorite Talkin Cowboys listeners, and all of you who listen to Talkin Cowboys are our favorite listeners, but John Nelson is a favorite because he listens across the pond. He's out in the UK listening to us, and he's a huge Cowboys fan, big Liverpool fan. He likes LSU as well. I don't know. Dave Hellman somewhere is smiling along the way. I don't know. Yeah. But John Nelson, happy birthday. It is his birthday today, and he wanted a shout-out. So we're going to give you a Talkin Cowboys shout-out because you've always been super supportive of us, and we love all our Talkin Cowboys fans. So quick shout-out to John Nelson. When we come back, though, here on Talkin Cowboys.
Make a pipe for us.
Yes. Yeah, there you go. When we come back here on Talkin Cowboys, who is the favorite to replace Mike Nolan as the defensive coordinator? We've got 7 names for you to talk about coming up on the other side of the break. We'll be right back here on Talkin Cowboys.
There's nothing as unique as our eyes, which is why Essilor pioneers ways to make lenses as unique as you. Varilux for super sharp vision, Essential Blue for protection, and Crizal for freedom from glare. 3 cutting-edge solutions in a single unique lens. So whatever your needs, insist on Essilor. Visit your local Essilor experts and find the perfect lens for you. See more, do more, Essilor.
Since 1865, Stetson hats are American-made with pride right here in Texas. And Stetson is proud to be on the field with America's team. Want to show your Texas and team pride too? You can. By purchasing your own Stetson, you can look just like how the flag guys do on field at every home game. Stetson hats, the official crown of all self-respecting Cowboys, and your favorite football team.
Get yours today at shop.dallascowboys.com or at stetson.com.
I'm Jay Novacek, former tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Back in the day, I was the guy who always got the tough yards, and that's why I run with John Deere today. In fact, I have a John Deere 3025E tractor that can handle any yard work I need to do, even the tough yards way out back. So if you have 1 acre or 1,000, John Deere has the equipment that's just right for you. Visit a John Deere dealer today and run with us. We are the official tractor provider of your Dallas Cowboys.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Back to Talkin' Cowboys.
It's Talkin' Cowboys off-season edition number 1 here from the virtual SWBC Mortgage Studios. And whether you're watching from home or you're cheering in the stands with Essilor lenses, you can see every exciting play. Book an appointment at your local Essilor experts and see what Essilor can do for you. See more, do more, Essilor. Isaiah Stanback, as always. Rob Phillips, Heckma Harrison. I'm Kyle Yeomans. As we head into our second segment here of our off-season edition of Talkin' Cowboys, here's the good news. So you don't necessarily get Talkin' Cowboys every day, and I hate that for everybody. That's a big frowny face all the way through because of the off-season. However, instead of having a 45-minute show, you get an hour worth of Talkin' Cowboys to listen to. So that's always fun. That's a big thumbs up. Woo! We get an hour-long show, so we are just, we're about halfway through here on this Monday morning. But, of course, we're talking about the defensive coordinator and Mike Nolan out after 1 year as the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. And there's already been reports and quickly moving processes whenever you talk about hiring a new defensive coordinator, and that's kind of what it needs to be whenever the Dallas Cowboys fire a defensive coordinator. You need to hire one pretty quick. Well, I've got 7 names that could potentially be the next defensive coordinator as of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, there have been 2 that have been really rumored around interviews, and one that is apparently flying in, Rob, and that's Dan Quinn. Tell me about what the latest updates are around Dan Quinn, the former head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, and what is the potential with him coming in?
I want to hear these other 6 names, man.
Yeah.
Okay, you want the 6 first?
Yes.
You want the 6 first? Okay, so I'll go down the list. Dan Quinn is number 1, and I think that's the most likely option. Number 2 on that list is George Edwards. Number 3, Matt Patricia. Number 4, Joe Barry. Gus Bradley is my 5th name. Ooh. Winston Moss is the 6th name. Actually, I miscounted. I only have 6 names. So I thought I had 7, but I have 6, so that's disappointing. How about this? I'll throw Isaiah Stanback in there. That's the 7th name.
Hey.
That'll be the 7th name. You're welcome, everybody. So 7 names to replace Mike Nolan as defensive coordinator. So Dan Quinn, George Edwards, Matt Patricia, Joe Barry, Winston Moss, and Gus Bradley. And if it's none of those names, I will. I don't know.
Don't do it, Kyle.
I'm not going to make another bet. I've already gotten in trouble.
You going to run to the Star?
Well, I'm not going to run to the Star and back. That's not going to happen if something else happens there. But tell me about Dan Quinn, Rob Phillips.
Well, there's 2 names that you didn't have on your list that the Cowboys have actually talked to already, and that's Joe Witt Jr. and Jason.
Oh, that was the other name that I forgot to write down.
Both of
former Green Bay.
Both of whom worked with Mike McCarthy on his staff in Green Bay. They are currently the passing game coordinators / secondary coaches. Joe Witt in Atlanta, Jason Simmons in Carolina. Mm-hmm. So obviously there's familiarity there. That's always important. But with Dan Quinn flying in, according to reports, I mean that's a pretty good sign. There's good interest on both sides, and so. Whether that gets done, we'll see. But at this point, I would have to assume he's the leading candidate. And based on resume, he probably should be.
Yeah.
I mean, a former head coach. And by the way, Mike McCarthy's. There's a pattern there, whether it's intentional or not. He has hired former head coaches as his defensive coordinators in the past. It was Dom Capers for many years in Green Bay. It was Mike Nolan last year. Yeah, and I've seen him on the list too, just kind of guessing at who he might go to here. But Quinn, I mean, his resume speaks for itself, guys. I mean, he's been to a Super Bowl as a head coach. He's been to 2 Super Bowls as a defensive coordinator, and arguably was the defensive coordinator for one of the top, I don't know, Isaiah, 3-4 defenses that we've ever seen with the Legion of Boom? Yeah.
Ever. Yeah, no, Dan Quinn's a good dude, man. He's a good dude. Gus Bradley, obviously, I have favoritism towards both of those guys because I've obviously been with both of those guys at any given point in time. Gus Bradley was actually my head coach when I was down with Jacksonville. He was a defensive coordinator when I was with Seattle. Both of those guys are great, high-energy individuals. They're all about positive energy. They're all about competition. There is no favoritism at all. You earn your keep. Every day they're going to bring more fire than you bring to the job. It's a positive work environment, and they're both just awesome, and they're both creative. They're both very creative. They adapt very well. It's not like they're stuck in their ways. They learn on the go. They adapt on the go. They adjust to their personnel. One thing that they both do really well is they put their guys in position to be successful. Guess what? If you're think about like a Bruce Irvin. If you're Bruce Irvin, you're an undersized defensive end, but guess what? You can get to the quarterback. Guess what you are? You're a doggone defensive end. You're not a linebacker today. You play DN because we need you to get there. We need you to get home. We don't care what the stats say, what it says you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be this big and you're supposed to have this much weight. We don't care. As long as you can do your job and do it effectively and bring energy to this team and help everybody else do their job well, then guess what? I have a role for you on this squad. So that's what both of those guys bring, and I'll be excited if either one of those guys are coming in.
I really don't have a problem with the potential of a Dan Quinn hire. It's just, when I look at his coaching history, 2013 with the Seahawks, man, he inherited one hell of a secondary for the Legion of Boom. I mean, he inherited some dogs. I mean, yeah, you better have some positive energy. You got Earl, Sherm, Cam. I mean, it's kind of hard to come to work upset when you got that many goons in your meeting room, right? So, and also going back to him as a head coach, I think just the wheels fell off of his of the team once they lost the Super Bowl to Tom Brady in the fashion that they did. So let's talk about it, right? Also, the numbers in Atlanta, their passing defense is worse than ours. So, okay. I mean, look, I think that's cool. Like, I understand hiring head coaches and all of that, but, I think that this team, I think that when you look at coaching in general, going with these names is all right, but this defense needs a shot in the arm. We need someone to come in here with that energy, youthful energy, to get these guys up for it. And Dan Quinn may be a master at getting guys in position to do what they do best, but what if you inherit a bunch of guys that 25% of them just can't play? All right, so let's just, I mean, come on. I don't want to be the Debbie Downer in this whole conversation, but I just believe that right now, if you're talking about a Jason Simmons, a guy that right now is a secondary coach, the guy that is a name that is rising amongst future defensive coordinators, you have guys like Raheem Morris that's out there, and also on staff, you have George Edwards, a guy that is known, that has that same kind of pedigree that you're flying guys in for. And let's just throw a wild card name out here, a guy by the name of Scott McCurley. He's your linebacker coach. He's a guy that comes from the Don Capers defensive school of thought. He is a guy that Don Capers, if you don't know, he's an aggressive 3-4 caller. Like, there are people out there, there are names out there besides those household names that we just want to go to say that these guys are going to be the next up. That's it.
You want a young guy. You want Kellen Moore. You want the two coordinators to combined have Mike Nolan's age potentially.
And I do. And I think if you look at the Stefanskis, of the world, the Los Angeles head coach, those young guys, They get an opportunity to inject their imprint on their team. At some point, we just can't go through this whole, oh, you got a name, so you could come in and be a coach. No, man. Let's try something different here. And maybe that try something different isn't the mantra for a lot of these coaches, but at some point, Scott McCurley has to get an opportunity to be a defensive coordinator. He's put the work in.
Hey, Heck, that's interesting because just on my list, it's my list, but Marvin Lewis was a guy that I'm thinking, man, great resume, interviewed for the head coaching job a year ago. I think he's getting some head coaching interest, though, from Detroit. But, I mean, he's obviously a really, really good coach.
Yes.
And you mentioned George Edwards, and it's my understanding that Mike McCarthy is planning to talk to him as well. And he's on Kyle's list, and maybe he already did. Maybe they already had an in-house discussion. So, and he comes from a Mike Zimmer program, and we obviously think a lot of Mike Zimmer. So that's another good name too.
Now, Heckma, you bring up a good point, and I'm glad you kind of played devil's advocate here because I like the Dan Quinn signing. I mean, there's part of me that thinks he could. I mean, you said he's flying in. He could jump out of the back of the plane like you're in Call of Duty Warzone, dropping in really hot, going straight into Superstore. But there's another part of me that is a little bit of a tap the brakes sort of guy because I think there's whenever you look at his time in Atlanta specifically, what were the Falcons known for? They were known for offense. They were known for Julio Jones and Matt Ryan and the running backs, and they had a lot of success on offense, but it wasn't their defense that was really the identity. And that's what kind of scares me a little bit is he inherited the Seattle defense, then he goes to Atlanta, and those defenses weren't anything to write home about. Does that scare you at the same level that it scares me as? Because I think Dan Quinn would be a great hire, but there is still kind of that uncertainty that we might have had about let's say a Mike Nolan a year ago.
I'm right there, and that's what I'm saying. If you have Xavier Woods is a far cry from Earl Thomas, so it's all good when you get players like that, but the evaluation for Dan Quinn, if he is the defensive coordinator, is going to start immediately. And not only that, it's going to be a bloodletting on some of these positions because he's going to recognize that this guy just can't get it done. No matter if it's 2 gap, 1 gap, cover 4, cover 3, he can't get it done. So that's where for me, like I said, I just want a defensive coordinator that can get these guys' attention, get the personnel that he needs to be successful, because right now we just don't have it. That's it, man.
Isaiah?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, Heck, and I respect your point of view. Like I said, I can only speak to those two individuals No, I just
sounds like you're setting up just to like tear him down.
No set up.
I really do.
Everything
I think you do a great job. And then bang.
But
I'm digesting everything that you're saying, Heck, and everything that you're saying is the exact reasons why I would go with a Gus Bradley or a Dan Quinn, simply because like I said, I've personally experienced the energy. I've personally experienced the confidence that they instill into young players, how they build up guys from the ground up. And yes, he may have inherited some talent, of course, but those guys didn't walk in just amazing. Not all those guys didn't just walk in amazing. I saw some of those guys' growth from when they first walked in the door to the time that he built up their confidence, right? He was the first one getting up there, giving them a chest bump on the sideline in practice, right? While the DJ's playing music at practice. You know what I'm saying? Building those guys' confidence up, working on their communication.
That energy.
Absolutely. Both of those guys bring that energy. Gus Bradley has energy out the wazoo. I don't know where he gets it from, right? But both of those guys, like I said, I have seen it, and I know what they do, and I know what they do with young secondaries, right? Especially young secondaries. But then I also see how they have fun just in practice and how they create this culture. We talked about the lack of culture that our entire organization has right now. Both of those guys bring a culture. And then you talk about, those guys' lack of success on defense in Atlanta. Well, to my knowledge, Raheem Morris was calling the plays last year in Atlanta, right? So it's kind of like us, indicting Coach McCarthy with our offensive woes when there's really Kellen Moore calling the plays, right? So we have to look at that from that glass half full side of things as well.
But you don't let Coach McCarthy off the hook for what's going on either, Isaiah.
No, absolutely right. No, the head coach lets stuff come through, or they don't allow things to come through. But they obviously, in both situations, they weren't making the calls, right? They weren't making the call. So that's all I'm saying. Looking at it from that standpoint.
And Isaiah, you were there with him. Correct me if I'm wrong. 2009 in Seattle with
I was
there.
Yeah, well, no, I came in 2010 year, 2010. Yeah,
gotcha. And that was before they were the Legion of Boom, really.
Absolutely. That's when those guys first came in.
I mean, I hear you guys, Kyle and Heck. I mean, you got to have players. It's a players' league. There's no question about it. But I do think he's probably willing to adapt his scheme to what he has on the field because. Mm-hmm. In Seattle, they were kind of just a 4-3 defense. They played it up pretty straight up because they had the talent to, where they didn't have to do a lot of crazy stuff. They did more of that in Atlanta because they didn't have Earl Thomas and Chancellor and Bruce Irvin and Michael Bennett and all the guys you mentioned. So I would imagine he'd be more adaptable. I just think from a resume standpoint, he's as good as anybody that's out there,
Well, he's the one with Super Bowl pedigree on the resumes. I mean, you look at even Gus Edwards; he doesn't have Super Bowl pedigree. He was with the Bills for a little bit, then he was with the Vikings. He was with Washington before all of that. Never even got close or really even sniffed the Super Bowl pedigree that Dan Quinn has brought to the table in terms of his resume. So, I mean, there's positives and negatives for any candidate out there. You just got to figure out which ones outweigh which, and I think that's what the front office is doing right now. Now, Rob, kind of clarify this for me. I know last year, Mike McCarthy had a ton of say as to who his staff was going to be. It was a McCarthy-made staff. Is it the same this year, or is there going to be a little bit more input maybe from the front office, a little more oversight after what happened a year ago?
I think it's I think there's going to be probably a collective decision here, but I think ultimately the Joneses are still going to let Mike McCarthy make a decision on ultimately who he thinks the best candidate is for his staff. I really believe that. I think. Why are you guys laughing? What did I do?
Go.
Are you guys saying that Nolan was too much of a buddy hire? Is that
I'm all I have is Dick Vitale in my head right now. Not so fast, my friend.
That's Lee Corso. Lee
Corso. My fault. I don't think that they're going to give him the full control like they did this past offseason. I think they really wanted to respect him as a veteran, established, coach in this league. A head coach and Super Bowl winning coach. I think that they wanted to give him that, right? Hey, let's we're the Joneses. We're going to step back and let you do you. We don't typically do this, but we're going to let you do you. And now they're like, whoa, hold on, no, listen now. Now they're not going to pull a full Houston Texans and just disregard him like they disregarded Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. But I think that they are going to go with the guys that they feel are the strongest candidates, and then come to coach and be like, so what do you think?
The reason why I hesitate there is because I think over the weekend, because the reports were Jason Simmons and Joe Witt, who had been with him in Green Bay, it's like, Mike, don't just hire who you worked with in the past. Well, I mean, number one, that's not really accurate. I mean, look, and sometimes it works out great. Joe Philbin was a trusted assistant for Mike McCarthy in Green Bay for years, and he was probably the best assistant coach they had last year in terms of the job he did.
Arguably.
And he came in here, let Kellen Moore continue to call plays. He hired guys outside of his tree on other positions on the staff, John Fossil, others. So, I cap the brakes on that. That's all he does, is I guess what I'm saying here.
Heckma?
Yeah, I want him to cast a wider net. That's what I want. Okay. I want him to look at some guys. There are some up and coming coaches that can be looked at as well. But we don't know the whole involvement on whether the Jones family is vetoing every guy that he brings in, and if he has to get a larger list of guys. So whichever it is, at this point, we have to get a defensive coordinator in here pretty fast, because this is the musical chair time in the NFL anyway. Everybody's interviewing for positions, head coaching jobs, etc. And, just going back to this, the coaching tree, I look at the coaching tree of like Bill Parcells and all of the guys Sean Payton, Belichick, all of the coaches and I think everyone's trying to emulate or get in the line of certain coaching trees, but it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work. And the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys we want to play an aggressive style of defense. We have the guys up front, our edge rushers, guys to come after them. We can't sit back and put our one technique in pass coverage. We got to get down with this thing and make it look and have something that looks something like a defense. Last year, 2020, just throw all of that away. It didn't matter the last 4 games, the turnovers, none of it, because it was garbage. The yardage, the rushing, it turned into a track meet. It was a track meet, okay? So your buddies aren't helping you. And if you want to save your job, if this is what you're in it for, to win a championship, you're going to have to get somebody in here that can coach this up, because it ain't happening.
I tell you right now. I can tell you right now. If I had Gilbert Brown as my one technique, I'm dropping him off in coverage. I'm just saying. I'm dropping him off in coverage.
All 380 pounds?
All 380 pounds.
Not Gilbert Brown, please. That's the last person.
Anybody interested in Chris Richard here?
I was just thinking that. Throw his name.
Chris Richard.
Yeah, he took a year off. Obviously, I think you throw his name in the hat. But again, he comes from that Seahawks tree, right? That'll be three guys from the Seahawks from Pete Carroll's lineage now, right? So
let's just go get Pete Carroll.
It's just pretty much Pete Carroll.
Let's go get him.
The new Belichick, is that what it is?
No.
Shoot. I know. Trust me.
I don't know anymore, man, after last week.
But no, you have to look at everybody. And to Heck's point, if you're Mr. Jones, Heck, and I hear you want a young buck, you want a spring chicken that nobody really knows about, an up and coming, right? A sleeper. But if you're Mr. Jones right now, can you afford to do that, swing and miss? Can you do that?
That's kind of where I am too.
You're missing anyway.
But you can't miss this time. You can't.
You can't miss on a guy that's unproven. It's one thing to miss on somebody who's. I'm just saying. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying it's one thing to swing and miss on somebody who's proven in this league versus swinging and missing on somebody that you are hopeful for. Those are two different swing and misses. Two totally, because you could justify one. This guy's been a head coach. This guy's won a Super Bowl. That's the reason why you brought this head coach in, right? Yeah. Or you can go with this guy was an assistant to such and such assistant, and he's up and coming. He has great energy. Guys are talking positive about him in the organization. Let's go with him. You can't. Yeah. That's not enough to lean on. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that those guys aren't worthy. I'm just saying if you're Mr. Jones, you can't afford to swing and miss on somebody who's unproven.
Now, one difference would be, Heck, to your point is Joe Witt and Jason Simmons. Mike McCarthy has seen them work. He knows them very, very well. So there's a difference there than maybe hiring a guy who's 30 years old who you never worked with, but it comes highly recommended or whatever.
How does things ever change? It's ingenuity. You have to find a better way to do things.
I hear you.
And Sean McVay in Los Angeles, he wasn't a household name, but he is now. And someone took an opportunity on him. And so when do we do that? Because I tell you what, I don't understand these guys that fail their way to success, like the Dan Quinns of the world. You just got fired, bro. Your defense was last in passing, and I know we put this on Raheem Morris, but he's at the helm of all of that. So you're supposed to be the defensive guru, right? So I'm just saying, sometimes you have to look outside of the box, and maybe that's the thing that changes the trajectory of your success as an organization. That's all.
I agree. And Sean McVay is an extreme case. I don't know if you can compare any young head coach or any young coach, period, to a Sean McVay, because that was a special case, something that worked out perfectly. And right now, I'm past the point, and maybe this is because of Kellen Moore, but I'm past the point being the Dallas Cowboys and having one of your 3 most important positions on your coaching staff learning on the job. Yeah. That's what I'm scared of. I'm scared of having another learning on the job moment. And I get wanting to change things up. I really do. And maybe you have to. And that's where maybe your position coaches and your special analysts and things like that come in. But I think if you're going to swing at a defensive coordinator, you need to swing at someone with pedigree. Maybe that's Dan Quinn. Maybe that's somebody else along the way. I'm not saying
Mike
it has to
Nolan
be
gave
Dan
up
Quinn.
more points than any coach in 60 years.
Mike Nolan
you talk
didn't
about
have
swing
a good
and miss.
pedigree.
You didn't even have a bat in your hand.
Mike Nolan didn't have a good resume, or nearly as good of a resume as a Dan Quinn did.
Okay.
Not nearly.
Hey, Heckman, what would be your sentiments if they just said Sean Lee is the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys?
Oh, my gosh.
That's not what I'm talking about, Isaiah. Don't patronize
I just asked the question.
Okay, that's not what I'm doing.
I just asked the
No.
question.
They're
He fits the criteria. Sean Lee would fit the criteria. He's only 34, heck. He's only 34.
Sean Lee, you know who he is.
Right.
You know his work ethic. You know how smart he is. You know this guy.
Guys, that's not. Guys, you're evil, and that's not what I'm saying. Okay.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Heckman's so flustered, and that's when I have the most fun on this show. All right, we're going to step aside. When we come back, we're going to talk about one of the best mic drops in the NFL's history, and then also we may give you a cheat sheet on free agents, or we might talk about the coaching staff a little bit more. We'll figure it out when we come back here on Talkin Cowboys, presented by Geico.
We're back with a tasty treat that's sweeping airwaves and taste buds. It's new Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda. Let's take a listen.
Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda's here. A new combo that's music to my ears, okay. Let's play. Cream Soda and Dr. Pepper time. Pour it in a glass of ice.
Ah, music to my ears and mouth. New Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda.
A delicious duet.
There's nothing as unique as our eyes, which is why Essilor pioneers ways to make lenses as unique as you. Verilux for super sharp vision, Essential Blue for protection, and Crizal for freedom from glare. 3 cutting-edge solutions in a single unique lens. So whatever your needs, insist on Essilor. Visit your local Essilor experts and find the perfect lens for you. See more, do more, Essilor.
The Cowboys way, where 16 Hall of Famers and 5 championships shows us what success looks like. Where turkey is always the second best part of Thanksgiving Day. Where we are all defined by one single thing, the star. Where we as fans know it's our job to keep the tradition going. Bank of America is proud to be the official bank of the Dallas Cowboys and to support the quest of living life the Cowboys way.
Copyright 2020, Bank of America Corporation.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Back to Talkin Cowboys.
Back here for the final segment of Talkin Cowboys, presented by Geico here on this Monday morning. And whether you're listening to music while you work out or, of course, listening to us here on Talkin Cowboys, you can experience audio at a whole new level with Bose Quiet Comfort earbuds. Bose Quiet Comfort earbuds are the official earbuds of the Dallas Cowboys. Welcome back in. Final segment here. Heckma rocking those Bose Quiet Comfort earbuds as always. But wanted to kind of go into a moment that happened yesterday in the NFL playoffs, and Jimmy Graham, tight end for the Chicago Bears, in what could be his final season and maybe his final catch of his career, had one of the best mic drops I might have ever seen in the NFL. He goes over the middle. It's the final play of the game. Chicago's already losing, and New Orleans has wrapped this thing up. And he goes over the middle, and he makes a fantastic one-handed grab. I believe we have the clip here of Jimmy Graham going across the middle and going into it. But does it have audio, Chris? Does this have audio on it? No clip? Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and roll that clip. It's rolling right now. Okay, cool. So whenever you look at this, he makes the grab one-handed, touchdown, time's expired. He continues and just runs straight into the tunnel. just run straight into it. Kind of, I mean, Randy Moss's it. I mean, go straight up the tunnel. Just a fun way to say goodbye to Jimmy Graham, who, of course, had his career in New Orleans. But Isaiah, as somebody who has played in the league and had some mic drop moments yourself, is this the best mic drop you've ever seen?
It's pretty doggone good, man. That's a heck of a catch. And obviously, is it garbage time? But if that is his career-ending catch, man, hey, hats off to you. I know he had a bumpy road in terms of his career, but I think he's pretty doggone well respected around here. So if that's how you send it off, man, then shoot, put that on replay, put it in a doggone case, and just roll it over. He should have kept the ball though. He should have kept.
Yeah, I don't know why he dropped the ball.
Yeah. I don't know. That was probably. I guess that was the mic. That was the mic drop, but.
That was the drop of the mic. Yeah. Rob, I mean, I know you've gotten to cover Jimmy Graham before and kind of his career. I mean, is he one of the better tight ends in NFL history?
Yeah, I mean, I've watched a lot of Saints football just because that's who I grew up pulling for through family and stuff. So, yeah, he's an amazing tight end. He's one of the tight ends that kind of changed the game in a way, along with or kind of kept it going in terms of what Tony Gonzalez and Jason Witten did, a different type of tight end. Gronkowski, best mic drop I've ever seen in any sport. When Damian Lillard hit that three-pointer to beat OKC and just wave goodbye. Wave goodbye. Yeah. That's the best mic drop. I don't think he can ever be topped by anybody.
Wow.
Hey, man, I've loved Jimmy Graham since the U, and since he was in his Miami days, and Miami has a thing for turning those tight ends into superstars. And, man, that's just another one of those Jimmy Graham moments. He's had a fabulous career. I really hope that this isn't the last that we see of Jimmy Graham, because he showed this year that he had something left in the tank. And so just Chicago and Trubisky and just the quarterback struggles that they had, this may not have been the best year for him.
He still had 50 receptions, like you said. I mean, he was somebody who had a legitimate impact for Chicago. 8 touchdowns. I mean, that's the most touchdowns he's had.
Though. Yeah, that's how he won.
Now, Rob's got me thinking. I'm trying to think of other mic drops, one of which was against my favorite team in the MLB and Major League Baseball, was a Jose Bautista bat flip in the ALDS back in, 2014, 2015? And Jose Bautista had the bat flip where he threw it up in the air.
He got punched in the face for that too, didn't he?
He did get punched in the face for that, thank goodness. Rudy Odor came up and stepped up. But I'm trying to think of what are some Cowboys mic drops, if we had any. I think Brad Sham had a really good one with the move over sweetness, make place for Emmett call. That was kind of a broadcaster mic drop, even though he didn't necessarily retire after that. But
Rocket Ishmael against then the Washington football team in overtime, Troy Aikman, Rocket Ishmael. That may be one. That's a long time ago.
That's a good one, though. Yeah. No, I like that. That's a good one. Isaiah, you have a favorite anywhere in there? Could be Cowboys. Could maybe not be.
Not like just like pure off walk off. I mean, obviously, I think back to my times in Seattle and watching King Griffey Jr. in the Kingdom. Was it in the playoffs and he hit that doggone inside the Parker? Yeah. He was rolling. So that for me is this big moment. But other than that, man, nothing crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, without two.
Michael Jordan. I think Michael Jordan has the best walk off, the Gatorade hand. Come on, that's just like it doesn't get no better than that. So
the push off on Russell.
What? He escorted.
But then he went back to. Then he came back again, which that never happened. The Wizards years never happened.
Yeah, what are you talking about, Rob? I never saw any of that. Now,
I'm trying to think Cowboys mic drops, and I can't think of any on the top of my head. Might be a good list that we put together though.
Yeah, maybe we need to look into that. Now, we will get into free agents and things like that. We kind of ran out of time in this show, so I think we might save that for next week to kind of talk about which free agents are most likely to go back and forth. Ooh, Douglas just sent me a mic drop on my phone, but I'm unable to look at it at the moment. But I mean, we're going to look into coaching staffs and free agents along the way whenever it comes to the Cowboys offseason. I mean, there are plenty of guys, especially in that secondary, that could potentially go elsewhere here over the next couple of months. And, I mean, there's a lot of overturn that's going to happen, especially whenever a new defensive coordinator comes in here. But I want each of you guys to give me a name. If you had to say one free agent on the defensive side of the football that's staying this year, who would it be? Who would be your number one guy to stay? And we'll start with you, Rob.
Oh, man, I'm trying to pull up my list.
Yeah, no, I need to see mine too.
There's a couple of them.
Heck, save me.
Jordan Lewis.
Why?
There you go.
Why is that?
Dak for sure.
Well, Dak's not on the defensive side of the football.
No, I know. But Chris just yelled it in my ear, so, you know. But Jordan Lewis, I think Jordan Lewis, you know, when you talk about what he can do from the slot position, especially if you get better safeties, I think he's serviceable. He's a tough guy for his size. I mean, he had that penalty that made him look like a knucklehead, but he can make it back from that. Other than that, man, I don't see anyone else that I would want to bring back, just skill set wise and what he has in his wheelhouse. That's why I say Jordan Lewis.
Okay.
That's a
Rob,
good one.
Are you ready down there?
Yeah, who I would want, I would say I'd bring Alvin Smith back if I could. We'll see what the cap situation is and what he might get on the open market. I don't know if it's going to be a Robert Quinn type situation last year, but I think in terms of a rotation, he can certainly help you. But I like the Jordan Lewis one. CJ Goodwin, does he count? Because he's played like 8 snaps on defense this year, but I am definitely wanting to bring him back to captain my special teams.
Yeah, I would like that as well. Isaiah?
Y'all know I'm a Joe Thomas fan.
Yeah,
I'm a Joe Thomas fan. I think he's just consistent, man. Yeah, I think he's just consistent. I like guys that you can rely on. He's going to be there. He's going to be where he's supposed to be. He's going to play hard. He's going to play fast. He's going to hit you. That's something that you could lay your hat on at that position that we may not have been able to do most of this year.
Yeah, he doesn't have a high ceiling, but his floor is a little bit higher than I think maybe even Jalen Smith's is whenever it comes to that linebacking position. And
talk about
you guys,
the mic.
you guys know how I feel about that position.
No,
right
we don't. Tell us some more.
Tell us
yeah, do I need to say it with my chest?
I don't want to wait a week to hear this.
We saying it with my chest? Yeah, whatever. We'll talk about it next week. We'll figure it out next week. But that's going to do it here for us on Talkin' Cowboys, presented by Geico. So glad you've been with us here over the last hour. Be sure to join us next Monday, same time, same place, 11:30 here on DallasCowboys.com and the various streaming websites. But for Chris Beam back in studio, for Heckma Harrison, Rob Phillips, and Isaiah Stanback, I'm Kyle Yeoman saying so long. Thanks for joining us here on Talkin' Cowboys.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys?